Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, The Golden Thread, Tying the Value of Your Assets from Creation to Delivery. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We're really excited to share this project with you. A couple housekeeping items to start. We plan on leaving several minutes at the end of the presentation for questions. If you could submit your questions using the QA feature in your Zoom window, we'll do the best to answer the questions in the order they were received. If we run out of time and can't get to your question, don't worry. You can reach out to Hoodoo anytime for more information or to schedule a demo with your organization. We'd love to help in any way we can. We'll be sure to share our contact information with all those in attendance today. And also we'll be recording today's session and make sure that everybody gets a link to that recording. With that being said, let's dive in. My name is Adam Driggs, and I'm a solution consultant for Hoodoo Digital. I'm thrilled to be presenting alongside Amy Smothers and Shane LeBounty from CenturyLink today. Shane and Amy are fantastic leaders and veterans in the marketing, tech, and operations space. Over this past year, I've been lucky enough to work alongside the two of them and a few other amazing members of their team to design, develop, and implement a system for managing and tracking digital assets from creation to delivery. I really couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with. It's been exciting and a great learning experience to watch CenturyLink rethink their end-to-end digital strategy. I hope you find this case study as interesting as I have and can find ways to help your organizations innovate as well. I'm proud to be a part of the team here at Hoodoo, and I am continually amazed at all the creative and innovative solutions my colleagues and different strategic partners, including CenturyLink, have built. We're a team of specialized technologists, consultants, and creatives working to solve your business needs. We work with the industry's top creators like Adobe to leverage powerful technologies, including Adobe Experience Platform and Workfront. We provide core backend system support, develop personalized user experience, content strategy, and creative design. In today's demonstration, you'll see how Hoodoo helped bridge the gap in CenturyLink's different marketing technologies. And I'm going to hand things over to Shane LeBounty to give an overview of CenturyLink and how the project came to be. Shane, take it away.
Thanks, Adam. I'm proud to be a part of CenturyLink and happy to be part of today's discussion. A little bit about CenturyLink. We are the second largest U.S. communications provider to global enterprise companies with 43,000 employees globally. We're focused on trusted connections that maximize digital opportunities by leveraging our approximately 450,000 global route miles of fiber, serving customers in 60+ countries. We do this by enabling digital businesses and the digital home through adaptive networking, IT agility, and hybrid cloud solutions, in addition to our connected security offerings. That's a little bit about CenturyLink. Now we want to get into the prezo where we actually talk about our Adobe asset solution. So if you're talking about asset management, you really have to start first with the idea of storage. So I actually like to think about it this way. I learned a lot from moving. About 18 months ago, I moved for the first time in my married life. My wife is an elementary teacher. Shout out to the teachers. I think we appreciate them even more right now. But teachers have lots of things. And so in the first time in my married life, we actually had a storage unit. As we had a storage unit, we get ready to start the year and she says, I need my bell to start the year. What are you talking about? Well, it's actually a digital bell that when I raise the bell, instead of ringing, it actually makes a spaceship noise and it actually gets the kids' attention. That's fantastic. Great. Let me go find it. Can you guess where it was in my storage unit? Of course, it was in a box at the back of the storage unit at the bottom, probably labeled teacher stuff. There was no box that said bell that makes a spaceship noise. So I had no idea where to find it, and it took hours to find it. What I really wanted to do was, instead of digging into my storage unit, I actually wanted to get online and just order another bell from my favorite retailer. So if you think about my favorite retailer, if I go in and place an order, from the person that actually makes the bell. They get the information, it comes to the distribution center, it gets combined with my other orders, it gets boxed, it gets sent to my home, someone rings the doorbell, runs away, I go and find it, I open it, I have my bell, I didn't have to go dig in the storage unit. If for some reason the other thing in the box I didn't need or it didn't fit, I can send it back. So one of the things that we had to start with when we started the project is, what problem are we trying to solve? Are we really trying to make a better storage unit or storage sets of units? Or are we really looking at a distribution center? And so the way that we have been talking about this project is, it's really going from DAM 1.0 to DAM 2.0. In DAM 1.0, you're really looking at it as storage units. So again, in the creative space, you are finishing a project, you save it into your DAM or your network share or whatever your particular flavor is. You hope that someone named the files correctly, and it kind of is where creative goes to die. We were very fortunate before this project. We have really smart people that were doing a great job managing our storage units, but again, over the course of time, it's not one storage unit like in my story, it's thousands and thousands of storage units and thousands of digital files and boxes, and without metadata. So the way that we've actually looked at this project and really challenged Hoodoo as our partner, working with Adobe and Workfront, is how do we actually look at this as DAM 2.0, really a distribution center. So if you think about a distribution center, you actually, as the person running the distribution center, know from the order to the time it comes in, to the time it goes out, all the component pieces it takes to make it, to being delivered, to being returned, you know exactly where those things are. So we really try to challenge ourselves to think about that end-to-end model, to know exactly where all the creative pieces and the final products were, and then also how they were distributed. So to do that, you really have to start looking at your Martech stack. As a company, we have a lot of Martech tools. We own a lot more Martech tools here. So if you're watching this and our Martech tool is not on there, we probably have it. We made a simplified view to look at how do we actually look at the creation space to the distribution space, and really try to go from what I lovingly call Martech soup to an actual workflow of, like, how do we actually get these tools to work together in an end-to-end flow and really use it to create that distribution center approach. So you start to take these and start to lay them out in our digital strategy and creation strategy. So when you start to look at this, we're using Workfront on the left, where we're actually creating projects, creating schedules, assigning resources, creating proofs, leveraging a lot of the power of Workfront on the front end. In that center column there is Adobe Creative Cloud, Adobe Stock, Getty Images, the fuel that really lets our creatives bring those ideas to life. The third column is Adobe Assets. So everything that we're doing in the creative engine is actually flowing into Adobe Assets. Now, that's not just the finished file, that's actually the finished file and the associated files it takes to make that. And part of the solution that Adam's going to show you in a little bit is how we actually keep the metadata connected to all the files and the final files together. Following a little bit further to the right, if you look at the downstream systems, it's not enough just to store it in assets. We really wanted to make assets be the hub of the distribution all the way through. So our downstream systems are actually using the URL that comes out of our Workfront to Adobe Asset Integration, which becomes our golden thread, which Adam and Amy will tell you about a little bit later. So we really are looking at, assets, if you're on this panel or you're listening to the webinar or you're watching the replay, this is true for all of us. Assets are the fuel of the digital experience. So we really started to look at, in our instance, it's business unit and regional content. and campaign assets that we're looking at. They're really looking to source and curate the best content. We're using asset management to really pull together our omni-channel management and delivery to provide the fluid experiences, ultimately to fuel all of our different digital experiences that we have, with the ultimate goal of delivering a great experience to our end customer. So when we really looked at this, there's a lot of benefits, but a couple of the benefits that stand out is with asset management, we get content reusability, and we get the metadata and tagging to make it easy to not only create, but find assets. By going to that single source of truth, we allow our end users to see the latest and greatest assets every time, all the time. It also lets us look at asset lifecycle management. So it's not just enough to push this through. At some point, these are going to expire and we've got to start the process all over again. So this is a different version of our DAM use case that we came to Hoodoo with, and that Adam's going to be demoing a little bit later, is really Workfront into assets and then creating the golden thread to pass to our downstream systems. The approach that we took can be used in multiple downstream systems. 3 of our primary that we went really deep with our downstream teams because we see a lot of volume there are Marketo, Target, and AM sites. We're really looking to integrate our existing tools and our existing workflows versus standing up net new motions or net new tools. Why is the golden thread for asset end-to-end, why is that important and what are we talking about? They're going to show you a little bit more of what this means, but why it's important is for every asset, we're going to have one URL. That URL becomes the single source of the truth. And it's really going to be important when Amy gets to the reporting piece later in the prezo to show you the types of things that we can now report on that we've never been able to do before. So if you have one URL you're using through all your downstream systems, then you actually can start to harness the power of the analytics you get from those and start to ask asset level questions that we weren't able to ask before. As we were going through this, we learned, as we've learned with a lot of Martech, a lot of it is about the tech, but it's also a lot about the people and process. So it was really important as we were going through this to develop some guiding principles. So there's a lot of things that go into this, but here are kind of our 4 guiding principles that we worked with Hoodoo. Number 1 was don't reinvent the wheel. We really worked hard to understand our existing processes and our existing data. We added to some of them, but we really tried to leverage what was already there. One of the ones that we added that I'm really proud of is we are focused on claims-based marketing. That is fantastic, but it also becomes a really key metadata point in your asset to keep track of. So we actually added a motion and metadata that our teams are adding to the asset so we can actually track where the claims are used, so that when something is dated or needs to be updated, we can actually go find it. The second was life cycle of an asset. So that's where we're really focused on not just the final asset, but all the working files required to update it or rebuild it. The relationship between these items become paramount, because if you don't have this, when you go to pull it back into the shop and redo it, you still are creating a storage unit for your source files. The third piece is findability is critical, and we all search differently. So we really leveraged Workfront's data we were already capturing, and Adam's going to show in the demo, to really add to the asset as it's being created and as our team was doing their natural processes we were already doing. This was really important because it allowed us to add quite a few different metadata items that were added at the point of the natural processes versus having to come at the end and give them, here's 37 different things or whatever your number for your business is, to fill out those accurately at the end. The last one is begin with the end in mind. So we're working not just about the creative flow and how do we, create and move those things in a way that we can update them. But how do we actually think about this in reporting of how does reporting work? If we do this well, what are the questions that we can answer that we've never been able to answer before? And with that, I'm going to pass it to Adam.
Awesome. Thank you, Shane. All right, let's talk solution design. So as you saw from Shane's previous slides, there are a lot of technologies at play here. First, we have Workfront. As Shane mentioned, you can use Workfront to manage projects, tasks, issues, requests, scheduling, and a whole lot more. By using Workfront's project templates, approval workflows, and custom forms, you can standardize the process and establish some governance. You can also leverage the power of Workfront's custom report builder to calculate costs, hours, alignment, risk, or just about anything you can imagine. Creative teams then use Adobe Creative Cloud to turn those projects into reality by creating things like digital display content, web designs, videos, and presentations. Then there's AEM Assets, an industry-leading digital asset management tool with a ton of cool features, including custom metadata schemas, dynamic delivery through dynamic media, AI-enabled smart tagging and cropping, search tools, brand portal, an integration with Adobe Stock, and one of my favorite features, a native Creative Cloud connection using Adobe Asset Link. Using Adobe Asset Link, creatives can now check assets in and out directly from Illustrator, Photoshop, or InDesign. AEM Assets then can track any related or referenced assets during that creative process. With Workfront and AEM Assets implemented, we needed a way to get both these systems to start talking to each other. That's where Workfront Tools for AEM by Hoodoo comes in. It works in tandem with Workfront's AEM Assets connector by enhancing the connection between Workfront and AEM and adding some additional functionality like sending metadata back and forth between the two systems, automatically creating folders in AEM, and several other really useful workflows. Next, we have all the different downstream marketing channels like you saw on Shane's previous slide, including company websites created and delivered using AEM sites. We have Marketo, social media platforms, and many others. Lastly, and most importantly, we have a suite of analytics tools, including Adobe Analytics. And we'll use this to track different KPIs for the digital assets, including conversion rates, usage reports, and various engagement metrics. So as you heard Shane mention in a previous slide, one of our guiding principles while designing the new system was don't reinvent the wheel. So minimizing process changes for the project managers and creatives was critical. The last thing that we wanted to do was create some burdensome process that kept the creators from doing what they do best. We wanted to leverage the existing workflows in Workfront wherever possible so that we could ensure adoption and buy-in from the different project managers. And with all these technologies, we realized how overwhelming this could be if we didn't design a system that was simple and elegant. All right, a quick note before I jump into the demo. With the little time that I have to showcase all the cool things that are possible in this kind of implementation, I'm going to focus primarily on CenturyLink's end-to-end workflow. However, for those of you that like to hear more about Adobe Asset Links, smart tagging, smart cropping, Asset Share Commons, brand portal, or AEM sites, please reach out to the Hoodoo team and we'd be happy to follow up with subsequent demos or get you more information. All right, I will begin the demo in Workfront today. So for those unfamiliar with Workfront, it is an excellent work management platform, which put simply connects people to their work. It can be configured to support all your teams, regions, projects, and programs across your organization. I'm a huge Workfront fan, and I can't say enough great things about this product. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to discuss all the cool features available, but again, follow up and we'd be happy to get you more information. So here we are at the origin of all of CenturyLink's digital assets, a Workfront project. So what you're seeing on my screen is a typical project in Workfront with assigned tasks, including planned hours and due dates, project overview details. You can check updates. You can track issues related to the project. You can even create custom reports and a whole lot more. In this particular use case, CenturyLink is leveraging the power of Workfront's project templates in order to streamline project creation, create consistency, and establish some governance. All right, I'm no designer, but let's pretend here for a minute that I am one. I've been assigned a task in this project, as you can see down here, to create a webinar presentation. I've completed the first draft and I have uploaded my files to the Workfront project, which can be done here in the documents area. One thing I'm gonna jump back real quick and highlight, so in order to make this demonstration a little clearer, is in the project details tab in the Workfront project, you're gonna see a few options here that become critical in this demonstration. So you have this overview tab, and this is where, as Shane mentioned, we're starting before, when the project was merely an idea, no deliverables have been created. We've already started gathering that metadata in a natural way. So we're collecting things like the product name, what campaign does this support, who's the project owner, all that great stuff in the overview details. In this next tab, we have custom forms. So using Workfront's custom form builder, we can create forms specific to any project and establish some governance and consistency by adding drop-down fields, multi-fields, all that great stuff in a form that you would want, and you can make sure that fields are required. This way, we're enforcing that collection of metadata at the beginning of the project. So we'll come back to this here shortly. All right, so as a designer, I've come in here and I've uploaded my final webinar presentation, as you can see here, as well as any of these supporting documents that have come along with that presentation. You can, at this point, leveraging Workfront's proofing tool, review and approval, I can attach a proof template or a approval template to my final deliverable, and then that can go through a series of approvals. So what you're seeing on my screen over here is kind of showing the state in what stage this is in the approval process. So for this demonstration, we'll assume that all the proper approvals have been received on my final presentation, and it's ready to be sent to AEM Assets. So that's when the project manager comes in. So at CenturyLink, as a project manager, I now have a task to go and review the creative's final deliverables and ensure all the proper approvals were received. If that's the case, it's my job to go and drag those files into my AEM linked folder. Let's do that now. I'm going to select my files here, and then you'll notice over here on the left of my screen, you'll see a folder that has a chain link at the bottom. A chain link indicates that this folder is actually linked to AEM. So when I drag the assets over to this folder, I'm actually sending the assets along with all their binary over to AEM Assets. I'm going to pause here for a moment and just highlight a few things that you can do in terms of sending your assets to AEM using the Workfront tools for AEM by Hoodoo. There are several options here. So the way that CenturyLink is doing this is up here, there's an add new option. By adding new, you can scroll down and you'll see a from AEM. This is a integration that's set up with the Workfront tools, and that syncs to the AEM environment. When selecting that, you're then taken to AEM, and you can see here at the root folder level in AEM, these are all the folders associated with my AEM Assets environment. You can also select an asset and use the send to AEM option. So if you wanted to just select one particular asset, I could select that in Workfront and then send to. Another one of my favorite features in creating the folder in Workfront is leveraging the status field. So in Workfront, every project has this status field. You can customize your status for your business needs in Workfront. You can set different status. And we've leveraged this tool with the Workfront to AEM connector that once I select a particular status, so I could map my approved status to trigger a creation of a folder in AEM Assets. So automatically it'll take the name of the project once I flip the status to approved and create that folder in AEM. So a few cool ways to send the assets over there. All right, let's jump over to AEM Assets and see that our files are sent. So here on this screen, you'll see I have the Golden Thread presentation folder in AEM Assets. Right now it's empty. If we refresh the screen, we're gonna expect that all those assets that I sent over from Workfront are now there. So as you can see, My final webinar presentation, along with any of the supporting assets, are now synced into that folder. Let's open up one of these assets and check out the metadata properties. All right, so here we are, metadata. There really is a lot of power in this metadata, as Shane mentioned, not just in terms of findability, but also we've created a really natural way to add metadata to the assets without hiring an additional resource that goes in after the fact to catalog all their assets. This is a really expensive option, and in most cases, it doesn't get done because of the amount of effort that it takes and the cost. So we've been able to kind of create this take it one step further and pull the assets all the way from when the project or when the asset was merely an idea in a Workfront project, and keep those synced to the assets. So you'll see here at the top, we've got several different tabs related to the Workfront metadata. And CenturyLink's use case, we broke this up based on the Workfront object type. So in Workfront, an object is something like a project or a document or a request. So in order to kind of keep the metadata organized and neat, we broke these into different tabs. So in this first tab, you're going to see my Workfront project details. So all the information that I filled out on those custom forms in Workfront are now sent over into these metadata fields. So we're leveraging AEM's out-of-the-box metadata scheme builder and mapping the different fields with the Workfront custom form fields. We've created a really easy and simple way to do that just by opening up AEM's out-of-the-box metadata scheme profiles, and then you can assign a custom field in Workfront to that field, so it sends it right over. And as Shane mentioned, now I have, if at a later date I need to come in and find assets related to a specific Workfront project, I have all these different fields that I can now search on. Next, we have the Workfront asset details. So this is metadata that's related specifically to this asset, not the project, because a project may have multiple assets associated with it, but we wanted to capture details specific to the asset as well. So Workfront has a reference number to that asset, and then if there's anything that we wanted to add. This is also a bi-directional thing. So at a later date, if we wanted to go and add some details on the Workfront side to this asset, it will show up in here as well, and we'll show that more in a sec. And then last, we have any metadata that may be related to a brand or legal request. So now with the asset in AEM, we can leverage all the amazing features available within AEM assets. Features like smart tagging. So you'll see here, once this asset was sent over to AEM, automatically we applied a whole set of smart tags. So this beautiful picture of Bryce Canyon, AEM's smart tagging feature was able to pick that up. Without having to do anything, we have a tag for Bryce Canyon. We have National Park, all the things that we'll need, again, which is just going to make finding these assets much easier. And in the end, increasing our creative's content velocity. If I need to find a particular image for a new project, I can find that really quick rather than having to email 5 people and say, hey, where was that asset that we made? I'm looking for this photo. So we've really streamlined that process. All right, so one thing before jumping back into Workfront that I want to highlight here is AEM, once the assets sync to AEM, it's also leveraging a tool within AEM called Dynamic Media. So Dynamic Media is really a powerful tool that helps optimize delivery for all these assets. And this is where, as you heard Shane mention before, our unique URL comes in. So as I mentioned, with this bi-directional sync, when the assets are sent over to AEM assets, there is certain information that's being collected there that we are then pushing back to Workfront. So let's look at that now. So if I go over here to my linked folder, you'll see my assets. So these are showing here in Workfront, but really living in AEM assets. But what's great is we've auto-triggered a custom form to attach the assets when we sync them to AEM. So if we look at the same asset here, and then over on this tab, the custom form fields, you're going to see that automatically we had this custom form added to the asset. So this is where we can, at a later date, if we needed to go and add additional fields to the asset or update information, we can do so here on this Workfront form. and that information is going to get sent back to AEM as well. But there's one thing that's very important that we'll spend the most of the time talking about, and I will hand over to Amy here shortly, is this AEM assets URL. So once those assets are synced in AEM and those assets were then copied over onto a dynamic media server, which all those assets now have a power of a CDN, a content delivery network. So this URL sits behind a content delivery network. So if I open this asset up, you'll see here that now I'm able to deliver that asset with a single URL. So any downstream, so for our AEM sites, if we want to add a new image to a page, they can just take this URL and use that as the image on their page. This URL is really powerful. So you can add different query parameters to modify the image. So if we wanted to serve this image up on mobile devices, we can serve that up using just a different image modifier. But again, it's still the one URL per asset. So it really does become really powerful. You'll also see this, which Amy will talk about more, is our Workfront doc ID. So this is one of the tools that we're using to track the digital assets. And with that said, I'll hand things over to Amy to talk more about that.
All right, thank you. One URL to rule the golden thread. We've been referencing this phrase a few times during the presentation so far, but what does it mean and how will all of this custom development Shane and Adam have been talking about help us manage our content more effectively? You've seen this before, right? Shane covered it earlier. It's our end-to-end digital strategy, illustrating several tools across a portion of our Martech stack. Our design was to consolidate our marketing teams through a centralized workflow management tool with access to the creative tools and the ability to post to a single asset repository where we could then activate the asset across multiple distribution channels for inbound, outbound, and the web, all of which are integrated in one or more of the analytics tools referenced below. The key thing to note here is that we have focused on establishing a data connection for all these applications in our tech stack into a centralized location, which is our data lake. Our bidirectional field integration that Adam was talking about between Workfront and assets ensures that we're capturing key metadata fields for both tools. So as the guys mentioned earlier, we can also easily add new fields or update existing ones without having to write custom code. It allows us the flexibility to make updates to what it is that we want to measure or our metadata requirements in real time. As noted, our analytic apps all feed into our data lake as well. And now with the API from Workfront, we can easily correlate that doc ID that we've been talking about to the full list of metadata from all Workfront objects specific to each asset. Having all of our data centralized to our data lake allows us to layer on a data visualization tool, which for our team is Tableau. So this is just yet another data visualization of the metadata that's available in Workfront. Adam showed you a live example of this earlier, but we're simply highlighting for you again here that Workfront doc ID actually is at each individual asset level as well as added to the final URL, which you can see here. A few of our sample fields that we are showing right now is just the date, the campaign ID, the Workfront project ID, file name, Workfront doc ID, etc. This is just a subset of the extended list of fields that we showed you earlier. But again, we can access them by correlating that doc ID to the object tables that we have in our data lake from our Workfront API connection. The idea here is that you get to customize and access the meta fields that are most important to you and your business. So as I just said, every business has their own unique goals. This process of data aggregation and display lets you decide what's most important for you and your team to measure. I'm sure this looks pretty familiar to you. These are standard key performance metrics most businesses are measuring today. Most of these reports are available through various analytics tools, which we've already mentioned. You can work with your internal team and your business partners like Hoodoo to identify your focus areas and develop a reporting path to get you there. But for us, we wanted to focus on the art of the possible. We wanted to take it a step further. How do we optimize our content through data-driven insights? By aggregating all of our data to our lake, overlaying it with our data visualization tool Tableau, Our data analysts and data scientists can create multiple data display layers, and we can begin to assess to see how our content is impacting our business. A few key focus areas for us that we intend to focus on in 2020: improve web personalization. We want to be sure that we're serving up relevant content at the right time. Audience management, targeting the right companies and the right people. Conversion path, identify top performing assets by channel, as well as evaluate all content for high value engagement and lead generation. And most importantly, return on marketing investment. If we only had $1 to spend on marketing efforts, where do we put it to maximize our return? So to round this out for you guys, real-time data analytics grants us the opportunity to assess what's working and what's not. All our data consolidation efforts around this project allow us the flexibility to make changes quickly so that we can pivot when necessary to drive positive business impact. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Shane.
Thanks, Amy. So some key takeaways from our project with Hoodoo. The first one is just the power of partnership. Hoodoo was a great partner that not only helped us create the solution by looking at people, process, and tech, but is also a valued partner to help us support and extend the solution as we discover new use cases. We really learned a lot about the power in metadata. So how we actually are capturing the metadata that's already created as part of Workfront and the different objects and different processes we were already doing. We're really excited about that piece of it because to Adam's point, when we were starting the project, that was one of the key questions: is who and how does the metadata get applied, and what sort of staffing would we need to do that if it happened at the end. To really don't reinvent the wheel. You know, we really tried to look at tools we already had, tools, processes that we already had, and tried to really challenge ourselves and challenge Hoodoo and even Adobe and Workfront as we were reviewing the solutions. How can we actually get the most power out of the combination of these tools with the least amount of changes for our actual people? So again, our creative people can focus on being creative, not being distribution specialist. Beginning with the end in mind. So, you know, really looking at, don't be afraid to change your processes or the way you're thinking about it, but really look at what questions are you trying to answer and what would be required to do that. So it took us quite a bit of time to figure out how to get that common golden thread through our process, where and how. But really, we started with here, if we could get to that distribution center model, what are the business questions that we want to ask that we've never been able to solve before? Things like, how did an asset perform across business units, across channels, across even messages, even in the same channel? So we really tried to start with greenfield. What are the types of questions that we aspire to get to, and kind of started to work backwards into some of these solutions. And then with that as well, you know, really digging in to figure out what does that take and how do we roadmap those things. The last one, which is where, you know, we're excited again to have Hoodoo help us figure out this journey, is we created this in a flexible, extensible way so we could minimize the time to value and have some of it, but make it flexible enough where our admins can actually add fields, or we can continue to extend how this works. So it helps us minimize the time to value, not only of Workfront, but the power of Workfront with Adobe assets as well.
Well, I just want to say it's been fantastic doing this project with them, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation today as much as we did developing the system with them. So with that said, Peter from Hoodoo is going to help us out with some questions today. So we're gonna jump over to the Q&A round and answer some of your questions.
Yep, thanks, Adam. And just as a reminder for all of the attendees, there is the Q&A option. If you have some questions you would like to submit, go ahead and do that now. We'll start off with one. Does CenturyLink use Workfront proof for their assets?
I'll take this one. Yes, we do use proof. We use it pretty extensively, both inside of our creative process, but also with our end user stakeholders. One of our first Workfront pieces that we actually worked to automate and move to Workfront was our brand and legal request for those pieces that were designed or created externally. They're using that proofing across legal, brand, quite a few different ecosystems that support the creative process.
Great, thank you. Here's one, Adam, probably for you. With the Workfront Tools connector, can you create new tasks in Workfront?
Yeah, great question. So again, the Workfront tools, what I was showing today is just a limited set of what it can do. There are a lot of really neat configurable features available. One of those being a workflow in AEM. So with the Workfront tools package, there are certain workflows that you can customize, and you can create tasks and issues and different object types in Workfront based on certain triggers. So you could have every time an asset is uploaded to AM Assets through Workfront's linked folder, you could then trigger a task to get created or a new issue to get added to the task. And there's a lot of, you kind of saw that with we attached a custom form. That's another one of the custom workflows available. So one thing that we wanted to do was make it easy for the project managers that were already in Workfront. We don't want them to have to learn a whole new system like AM Assets, but we wanted them to have all the tools available in AM Assets at their fingertips. So we created this sync by automatically attaching a custom form along with the assets when they're synced. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool features that can be done, like auto-publishing assets upon ingestion into AM, things like that. So great question.
Shane or Amy, maybe this is for you. Is CenturyLink planning to use something like Brand Portal or Asset Share Commons as a channel for asset use, either internally or externally?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that one. Yes, we do. It is a next step for us. We don't have it configured as of yet, but we're looking to do that here in the near term. And we're very excited to customize the UI specific to CenturyLink. Honestly, the whole reason with going with this particular assets version was so that we could easily share content across our multiple marketing teams as a few of our external agencies. So yes, absolutely. It's a great offer.
Awesome. And there was another question that came in related to that. What are some of the enhancements you guys plan to make to the process from here?
The process, which portion of the process?
I'm not sure. The question was just stated as that. So is there anything more that you guys plan to do as it relates to how assets get moved across and tracked that we didn't cover today?
I could jump in there in terms of like the roadmap future for the Workfront tools. So the connection to AEM and Workfront. We definitely have big ideas and extending that tool even further. So in terms of that sync between Workfront and AEM, that's constantly evolving and changing, and we're adding new features all the time. So I think in that space, you'll see a lot of more enhancements, and we'll work with our partners like CenturyLink, obviously, to help discover the use cases and how to implement these the best. But it's definitely an ever-changing and evolving tool set. So,
and to tag on to that a little bit, I think as far as the creative flow that we looked at today. We have some other ideas, but I think right now we're working on just following up with our project managers and watching this data move through, and really starting to partner more with the data folks to start to see what are those data stories that start to come through. And some of the pieces that Amy showed is really where we're focused currently.
Great. Another question that came in. Can we update or overwrite the asset in Workfront and update the same to AEM as a new revision?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. One that I didn't have enough time to show, so I'm glad someone asked it. But there are ways with the Workfront connector tools when uploading. So let's take a common use case of a simple revision on an asset. So as Shane mentioned previously, CenturyLink works a lot with claims-based assets. And let's say that one of those claims is now, is outdated and we need to go make that update. We created a way for CenturyLink is to, if you take a updated version of that asset, say some digital display content that's got a number on it that's now outdated. If the creative then goes in and makes the adjustment so that the claim's now updated correctly, when dragging that asset into the same linked folder, we're going to leverage AEM Assets version tool. So it will create a new version of the same asset. So it'll take that old asset, create a new version of that asset, and then you can use AEM's version preview. So you could go and look at those two versions side by side and keep a history of the different versions. So you could go in and look, in the past 3 months, how many times has this asset been revised, and are there comments along with those revisions? So we are able today to do that through the Workfront Tools connector.
And Adam, based on what we've learned as part of the exploration, it's really important, not only the location that it is in, but also the file name. So we worked with Amy and as part of our internal training on some naming recommendations. It's really important in that versioning process that the name and the location that it was saved is the same. And then to kind of loop back to the golden thread, if they do that, then the doc ID would stay the same, and then it would still be the same golden thread. So the actual developer doesn't have to change anything.
Right, which is also powerful down on, take an AEM Sites author who's using that image on a web page. They don't have to go in and put in upload a new image and author it on the web page. If they're using that URL, then those changes are just going to automatically be saved the minute, within the time that the asset is dragged and dropped into that new linked folder in Workfront. All those downstream systems will see those updates.
Great. Another question here is, how do users find the assets to hand to downstream systems?
Shane, do you want to, we kind of highlighted that in the custom form piece, but if
Adam,
you want to take that one.
can you, I don't have the demo up. I was
Sure.
thinking if you can show your demo. A really clever solve that Team Hoodoo came up with was actually the AEM report that's on the project, Adam.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad you brought that up. That was a miss on my part during the demo. So thanks for the question. Here on my screen, again, we're back in the Workfront project. One of the things that, as Shane was mentioning, the challenge that the CenturyLink posed to Hoodoo was, how do we, once all the assets have been dragged into a linked folder by the project manager, how then can a project manager easily see all that information and that sync was successful? And then to the question, how can they then take those assets and deliver the URL to whoever it was requesting the new assets? So we created this AEM Assets report. So as I mentioned before, Workfront's got a powerful report building engine, and you can do a lot of really cool things. So we created this tab in the Workfront project. So all the projects will have this AEM Assets tab. If we click on this, it's going to generate a report, and you're going to see here's a link of all the Adobe asset URLs that we then sync to AEM just barely. So now I can go back to whoever the project sponsor or whoever's requesting the project or needs to use these assets in whatever downstream system, and send them back those URLs. I guess it's worth mentioning here as well that as you heard Amy say before, Asset Share Commons and Brand Portal is definitely on the roadmap for Asset Share as well in this process. So we'll be able to include this link in the Asset Share library so that if users, if they're for the public set of assets for internal teams at CenturyLink to use, they'll be able to do that with Brand Portal and Asset Share Commons as well.
Great, thanks. And it looks like probably one last question I saw over in the chat pod. Do you have an archive process?
We currently, we currently don't have an archive process. It's something that's on our roadmap. We just are about 6 months into a rebrand of new look and feel, so that has kind of helped us with addressing some of the archive pieces, but it's definitely something that as an additional use case we need to figure out.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you everybody. We'll be sure to send out a recording of this webinar to everybody in attendance today and follow up with some contact information and email. So I appreciate everybody's time today and hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday.